Hello, fellow truth seekers. This is Doug coming to you again with a new study. I hope all you folks have been well and been blessed. Again, as I always say, I thank you and appreciate all you folks for watching the videos, leaving comments. You know, it encourages me. I mean, that I see some people watch it and listen, and you know, it's for those people that truly want to know truth and to know Elohim's word, and to gain understanding. Just as a side note to the study, you know, it's just kind of a warning that I want to give people about what they're doing with the food, and in the air and in the water, everything. They are, you know, they're genetically modifying everything. You know, when you go in a grocery store, you need to look at the products that you're buying, and I understand that, you know, everybody don't have a lot of money. You know, some people are on fixed incomes and stuff, and they have to try to, you know, shop in a way that they can afford. But if at all possible, I would stay clear of these genetically engineered products, genetically modified products, GMO products, and not only are they doing that, but now it's my understanding that they are beginning to put mRNA gene-altering substances into the animals, into food crops, in the insects. I know for a fact that they've been doing the gene-altering on insects, mosquitoes and stuff like that. And so, you know, they're doing it to everything, and this is, you know, where it goes back to what Christ said about as it was in the days of Noah. You know, we really have to get our minds wrapped around the fact that they were not, you know, club carrying Neanderthals and cave dwellers. They were highly advanced back in those days, and you know, and as far as I'm concerned, that's where all these megalithic structures that we see all over the world come from. And you know, we have to understand that. And we have to, you know, realize that that is what the Messiah is talking about in Matthew 24. That as it was back then, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. They were, you know, yeah, they were marrying and giving in marriage, and they were building and tearing down, and they were violent, and they were, you know, everything we see going on now. I mean, talking about tearing down and building, I mean, look at China, how, you know, man, I mean, they have gone from being, you know, pretty much all agrarian dirt farmers to building these enormous cities, you know, with 20, 25, 30 million people in them, you know, and buildings everywhere. And same here in the United States. I mean, we're constantly tearing down and building, you know, I mean, it's just, you know, so, you know, and I'm pretty sure this has gone on all throughout history, but never on the scale that we see today. And except, again, going back before the flood, they was, you know, huge cities all over the earth, I mean, at that time. And we see the ruins of them. I mean, like over there in Egypt, they've done these satellite LiDAR scans of that whole area over there, and there's the footprints of buildings everywhere. I mean, for hundreds of, you know, for 100 square miles, hundreds of square miles, tens of thousands of buildings. And so, you know, and down there in South America, in those jungles down there, these areas they will not allow people to go into, because there's all these buildings down in there. I mean, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of buildings and structures all over there, and tunnel systems that just go all over the place. And they don't want us to know this stuff, because then it will confirm this. And anything that would confirm this, like the giants, you know, the skeletal remains of giants and stuff that are found all over the world, they've been found everywhere. the Smithsonian and other institutions that have been set up explicitly to get rid of this stuff and conceal it. But I'm just, saying, about the mRNA stuff. They are determined to put this stuff into us and to alter our genetics, which is exactly what was going on back then before the flood. That's why it says Noah was perfect in his generations, in his genetics. And so we need to be aware of that. Look at what you're eating. If there's any way possible, grow, if you ain't got a little balcony or a little patio or something, grow, some container garden, make you a container garden, whatever. Try as best as you can to raise your own food from heirloom plants. Plants that have not been genetically modified and altered. Because that's going to be about the only way going forward that you're going to be able to get any kind of food, and find local people that raise, heirloom crops. This stuff that's being shipped all over the country. You would think that these powers that are harping on this, this Green New Deal, and on, climate change and all that stuff would want the individual to, or communities to have community gardens, to cut down on the transportation and stuff. Well, that goes to show you their hypocrisy and their deceit. They're just trying to bleed us dry of our money is what they're trying to do, and bankrupt us. Because then they can, issue their global digital currency and, their great reset or whatever, and basically enslave you, these 15-minute cities where you're not allowed to go beyond 15 minutes from your residence in any direction. If you do, you cannot use your money or whatever, your digital currency. It won't work. Is to basically enslave people into cities so that they can keep track of you and watch every move you make. People that live in rural areas and in remote areas, it's harder for them to keep track of them and to see what they're doing and all that. But you would think, though, that they would encourage people to produce their food locally and to raise animals and stuff locally that are raised, eating the grass and not having to grow all these feed crops. And all these feed crops now, the corn and wheat and, sugar cane and beet crop, sugar beets, all that stuff's been genetically modified. That's the ingredients that you see on these cakes and candies and these processed foods you see on there, genetically modified or genetically engineered food product. That's what they're talking about. It's the grain, it's the sugar beets that they get sugar from, and sugar cane, these large commodity crops that they're getting this stuff from, and they're putting it in everything. And of course, people wonder why they have this gluten intolerance and all these different allergies and all this stuff to this food. That's because of that. That's why. They have so altered, because they we were originally, we were made to be able to eat grain and all that. If you look at the time of back in the days of the Messiah and even earlier on, they eat bread, they eat wheat, and you never hear nothing about it, even up into the time when I was a kid and stuff like that right there, back in the 60s. You never heard of any kind of allergies to wheat. You never heard of allergies to gluten and all that kind of stuff. That is because they have so hybridized and modified the plant that our bodies do not recognize it anymore. We don't recognize it. So we need to really be vigilant about it, because they're wanting to alter our DNA. Just like they did back at the time, because they want to corrupt Elohim's creation. That's the whole idea behind it. Satan wants to corrupt everything about his creation. And what easier and better way to do that than to genetically alter everything from its original genetic structure. So with that, I'm going to get off of that now, but today what I want to talk about, do not let any man deceive you. Do not let any man deceive you. And looking in the concordance, there was a whole lot of scriptures in there, and I picked out a selected amount that really kind of revolves around what I'm talking about, but about deceiving, deception, deceived. You know, there's a bunch of different terms used, but they all boil down to the same thing. And I mean, that, you know, and there's a lot of scriptures there. So it's obvious that, you know, the Messiah and the apostles really wanted to emphasize to us about being deceived. And so to kind of start it off, I'm gonna start here in the book of Revelation, let's see. I'm going to start in Revelation chapter 12. And it says here, in Revelation chapter 12, verse 9, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And this is coming. This is, you know, this is in the near future when they're going to be cast out. Because if you go up here, it talks about, it says in verse 7, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. They're going to be cast down here. And it may have already taken place. I don't know. Because I know that these UFO sightings and stuff are just, I mean, people are seeing stuff all over the world. And I'm not just talking about just regular Joe Blow, you know, Joe Schmo. I'm talking about, you know, police officers and, you know, military people and stuff like that are seeing these things. And that means to me that they don't care that we know that they're here. And one of the things that, you know, and of course I do not know whether this man is the Antichrist or not. You know, I think there's certain things that will have to happen in order for him to be, you know, for us to officially know that this is who it is. And I think the you know, peace, the making peace will be, because that's how he deceives people, is through making peace. You know, because when you look at the first, the white horse of the apocalypse, the four horsemen, you know, it says he comes, you know, he's coming, you know, making peace and all that stuff. Well, but there's a lot of people now believing that it's probably King Charles. And when you begin to look at his lineage goes over to Germany, the Assyrians. You know, and you can, you know, Lawrence Gardner was the official genealogist for the royals of Europe. And they're all of those people are all related. I mean, that was, you know, when you go to begin to read back in history about these people, you know, the French, the Germans, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Germans, the Austrians, you know, I mean, all of those, you know, the Nordics, the Danes, the Swiss, the Swedes, I mean, all of them are, you know, related, you know, genetically. And through their their genealogy, but some of them go to certain areas that they are more connected to, and so, you know, and when you look at too, I mean, this guy, you know, people look at him as being some kind of, you know, like a soy boy or something, but he's not. I mean, he's sort of a man's man. He was, very athletic, military. This guy, and he's got all kinds of decorations, military decorations and stuff. So he's not, he's not a soy boy. And when you read what the scripture says about it, it says he is a man who worships the God of forces. And he serves a God that that his fathers knew not. So, his fathers probably, were Christian. At least in name. Whether they truly served Elohim like they should have, I don't know. But I don't think that they were worshiping Mars, the god of war, the god of forces. But it's what it says about this man, and and he's gotten all of these titles. And then when you look at his, crest and coat of arms and stuff, it's real indicative of who this man is. But again, I cannot with 100% certainty say yes that he absolutely is, but he really fits the bill. So just keep that in mind. And again, let no man deceive you. He's a man. Okay, he's a man. And it says that Christ told the Pharisees, he said, I come in my Father's name and you receive me not. But one will come in his own name, him ye will receive. And I think that is a reference to the Antichrist or the beast. And so, he's cast out down here, and he's coming down here to deceive. That's his purpose. To really deceive the whole world. And then in Revelation chapter 13 and verse 14, let's start in verse 13 here. This is Revelation chapter 13, starting in verse 13. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them, because remember, the beast, Satan, the dragon, gives all of his power and authority to the first beast. That's why it says that the second beast is able to do these miracles in the presence of the first beast. He's given this power. And so whenever the first beast is present with the second beast, then he is enabling the second beast to do these miracles by which they deceive the world. And it says he miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. And this is, of course, the abomination. The abomination that causes desolation is this image that they put in the rebuilt temple over there. But now that temple over there is, I don't know that I don't really think that it's going to be a rebuilt temple. I mean, a full-scale temple. I believe it's going to be more like a tabernacle, because the scriptures tells us that the third temple will not be defiled. That's a temple that will be at the during the millennium. There won't be no defilement there. But these these beasts are going to be doing this deception, and so we need to keep that in mind. That is when Satan's cast back down here. That is, the whole agenda is to deceive. I mean, he's the great deceiver. So that's what it comes down here, having great wrath. He knows that he's got a short time to do it, and so he's going to be going all out. And we can look here at just one of the ways in which they're going to do this. And of course, and this is at the lead up to it. But when you go, this is in Revelation chapter 9 and verse 21. It says, "Neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornications, nor of their thefts." Now what we're going to do here is the word sorcery there. Now it can mean witchcraft, sorcerers, people doing, spells and incantations and stuff. But we're going to look at the definition of it in the Greek. And this is it's 5331 in the Greek dictionary of the Strong's Concordance. 5331. Let's see. 5331. The word there for sorceries is pharmakia. Pharmakia. So, what does that tell you? Pharmakia is the word that we get pharmacy from, that we get pharmacopoeia, which a pharmacopoeia is basically a dictionary of drugs. That has all the known drugs that have ever been made and substances that have been used to treat illnesses. But let's just read the definition here. Pharmakia, witchcraft, magic, the use of spells and potions of magic, often involving drugs, sorceries, and witchcraft. All right, well, today, all these people are clamoring about this DMT that they're using in these for religious experiences. And this, and ayahuasca, which is, I think DMT is like a synthetic version of it. But people that take this stuff, they experience these euphoric visions. And Native Americans, especially in South America and places like that, they used ayahuasca or something like that, which was a plant that they used, that they extracted this stuff out of, and they would take it and they would have these dreams or visions or whatever. And of course, when they would see these entities, these fallen ones. And it's a way that they're deceiving people into doing this stuff, because it gives them the opportunity to take possession of people, of their minds. That's why over and again it talks about, having the same mind that was in Christ, and so that this kind of stuff cannot infiltrate our minds. And because they're going to use all this stuff, every method available to them to deceive us. I mean, every method. And so we see right there that's what it says and then we can also look at the Greek definition of deceived, which is 4105, planeo, to lead astray, cause to wander, deceive, to be deceived, deluded, deceived, error, deceiveth, gone astray, seduce, deceiving, going astray, out of the way, wandering, went astray. So, planeo, Basically that sounds almost like being played. But when we look around, I mean, at even if I don't really watch the mainstream media other than occasionally I'll see a clip from them or something, and you just look at it to just see how outrageously, propagandist these people are. I mean, and they, they'll be saying the same thing at the same time. I mean, they got they're scripted. The mainstream news media, and the affiliates, the affiliate stations of CBS, NBC, ABC, MSNBC, CNN, the main newspapers. I mean, they parrot one another. They sound just like a bunch of parrots on there whenever they're giving the news, because it's all scripted. My understanding is the CIA makes a drop at 4 o'clock in the morning, and this is what they're going to talk about that day. That's the reason a lot of times when you turn on the news and some events happen, but you don't hear nothing about it. You hear crickets. Because that was not the day's narrative. That was not the propaganda that was to be put out that day. And so, they rarely ever will, used to, they'd have a breaking news, this event just happened. Not no more. I mean, they just don't do it. They get a script, they read that script, and they stick to it. I mean, and they will harp that over and over and over and over again. And I think it was, I don't know if it was Hermann Goering or one of those Nazis that was with Hitler. He was a propagandist, and he said if you tell a lie often enough and loud enough and repeated enough, with force, with verbal force, you begin to get people to believe it. I mean, they will actually start believing this stuff. And when we look around us, and the Germans had a word for this called the Zeitgeist, the spirit of the age. And that's what we can see. We're in this spirit of the age, this spirit of deception age. That's why I believe that here, and of course in the Old Testament it talks about deceiving and deception and stuff like that, but it just talks more about how a man deceives himself. We talked about that last week in, the vanity, about how vanity is really just self-deception. And but in here now that we're here in the time of Christ and the apostles, and he likened it to a woman in travail, that has conceived and is going to have a baby and is coming to the time of deliverance. And it's kind of funny that it really makes sense that the church was born, the gospel, and then the church age is being, the kingdom is being formed. The kingdom is being formed, and then it will be delivered at the seventh day, the day of rest, the millennial kingdom. That's when the kingdom is going to be birthed here on the earth. So it's kind of analogous to that there's a process of this church being developed and being built, being birthed, and then it's going to be birthed. The kingdom is going to be birthed. And it talks about in here how, that this woman was ready to deliver, and as soon as she delivered, the dragon sent a flood out after her to kill her and her offspring. And this is in Revelation as well, and it's in chapter 12, and that's what it's talking about. It's talking about that is getting ready to be delivered, and as soon as it's delivered, Satan sends out a flood. Well, the flood is is people. Water is always usually peoples. So he sends this army out after the woman and these saints to make war against them. And it says that the earth opened up and swallowed up this water, this flood, and that she was carried away to a place of safety. And that is these people that have the mark of Elohim will be carried away to a place of safety, and they won't endure a lot of what is going to be going on during the tribulation, and especially during the time of great tribulation, which is the last 3.5 years. And in the last year is the day of Yahuwah, whenever his wrath is fully poured out. And but we hope that we won't be a part of that, that we won't be deceived. And the way that you don't be deceived is to know this word, and to receive the Ruach, the Holy Spirit, receive the Ruach HaKodesh into your life, and let him lead, teach, and guide you to truth. And then you can't be deceived if you have the truth. That's why they hate this. That's why they hate this so much, because this reveals the truth, and they don't like it. All right. Now we're going to look here at Matthew chapter 24, and that's, of course, I use this book a lot, in this chapter a lot, because it really pertains to our time. Now, again, this particular chapter is a dual prophecy. It prophesies the near future of the disciples, the apostles. It prophesies what's going to happen right there in the near future concerning them, which was the destruction of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple. And there's people that try to say that the abomination of desolation that Daniel talked about happened then, but it didn't, because it's not to say that the Romans would not have desecrated the temple had they got the opportunity. But it got caught on fire and it burned down. And the only thing they could do was, after that, is they went and put their standards up, which each legion had their own standard. It was a little flag. Excuse me. It was like a pole with, a drawing on it or whatever, picture on it that was their god or whatever of their division. And they did get up there on the Temple Mount, and up there on the floor of what was left, but they had to actually go in there, and because they wanted to capture it, because they wanted to get all the gold and all that stuff that was in there, all the the golden vessels, and the walls were lined in the holy, the Holy of Holies, and in the holy place they were lined with sheets of gold. So they wanted to get in there and get all that stuff without destroying it, and then they would have probably desecrated it in some kind of way. So put up a statue of Zeus or Jupiter or Saturn or somebody. But they didn't get the opportunity, because back then they used these catapults and stuff, and they would lob, especially when they were under siege. A city or whatever, or a fortress was under siege, they would take catapults and siege engines, and they would launch big balls of like hot tar that was on fire. They would set it on fire, and they would launch it over the walls into the city or whatever, and burn down the buildings. And even though a lot of these buildings and structures were made out of, stone and mortar and stuff, but they still used a lot of wood. And of course, in that area over there, one of the most plentiful woods was cedar, and it didn't rot, and it wasn't, it was kind of impervious to insect infestation and stuff like that. So they used a lot of cedar because of its ability to repel insects and stuff. And so, but it's flammable. It's real flammable, and so they would launch these in there and they'd catch stuff on fire. Well, a lot of the woodwork in the temple was cedar, and it caught on fire and it burned down. And so, they had to actually go around and dig the gold out of the cracks and, between the stones and stuff like that, because it melted. And so they did not do the abomination that causes desolation. No, that's yet to come. And it's when they, caused the Hebrew people, or the house of Judah over there, to cease from the oblations. And he sets up an image, which is that image that it talks about there in Matthew chapter, or in Revelation chapter 12 or 13. They put up this image in there and cause people to worship it. And that is the abomination that causes desolation. The earth will be laid waste because of it. But here, and he said, Christ, and he says this is in Matthew 24, verse 4. Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ. In other words, these people will come in his name, and they will say that he is Christ, and shall deceive many. Well, look at all these churches today. I mean, they claim, he's Christ. And he is. Yahushua is Christ, the Messiah. But they're deceiving a lot of people. And through keeping the false Sabbath, through keeping these pagan holidays and feasts, through the corrupted communion, I mean, they're deceiving these people. And yet they come in his name, saying that he is Christ. And it says, and we'll read on in here, because let's see, I think I had it to verse 24. And ye shall hear wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginnings of sorrows. Well, what do we see going on? We're seeing, hearing wars, seeing wars and hearing rumors of wars. And of course, this has been going on since his time. I mean, the Romans fought against the Parthians, they were always fighting, and they fought against others too, the Germanic peoples and stuff, and against the hordes, the Genghis Khan and that bunch. I mean, they was always some kind of war going on, but not the kind of scale and destruction that we see in wars today. I mean, they just did not have that ability. And then there should be famines and pestilences and earthquakes and all these pestilences, these diseases that we're seeing, coming and popping up more and more. And earthquakes in diverse places, seeing earthquakes everywhere, and all these volcanoes coming alive. And there's been a whole lot of talk about Yellowstone. And even certain areas out there, they've been, blocking off and not allowing people in there. And there's some people like, and I don't hold a lot of credence with this guy as far as, he's an atheist, believes in science. Of course, it's Michio Kaku, but he said he believes it's getting ready to erupt. And of course, that volcano, well, it's actually called a caldera, a super caldera. It's a great big depression, and it's 90 some miles in circumference. And there's a big lava pool under it. And that's why you get all them hot springs and those mud pits and different kinds of volcanic features that you see there in Yellowstone. And they're, and I mean, every day you hear about that Popocatépetl or whatever it is down there in south of Mexico City. Just started erupting. Over in Hawaii, those volcanoes over there are, rumbling a lot. Down there in Indonesia, Krakatoa, son of Krakatoa, and different ones are going off. There's one down under the ocean down in there that's been erupting. It's a huge, huge volcano. And then Etna over there in Sicily has gotten really active. One over there on the eastern coast, eastern part of the Russian Federation, that's gone off. And I mean, it's been pretty big eruption and continuing eruption. I think they say there's like 40 or 50 of them around the world that are erupting, and more they're talking about Mount Shasta. Sorry about the interruption there, folks. But anyway, these volcanoes are going off everywhere, and it's increasing, and the intensity of them are increasing. And also earthquakes, it says in diverse places, different places. And we're seeing earthquakes in places where really we've never seen them before. I mean, there was some up here in Ohio, I think here recently, one up in like Maine. Really places that, even historically, never really heard of them. And of course, a lot of people don't realize it, but here on the East Coast, one of the worst earthquakes that's been recorded in modern times in the United States was on the East Coast, Charleston, South Carolina. And then you also, the worst one ever recorded here in the continental United States was out here at New Madrid in Missouri. It's a different type of a volcanic fault than what is in California. Those types of volcano or types of earthquake fault zones, and the rock structure is different. It's large plutonic rocks, and I mean when I'm talking about large plutonic rocks, I'm talking about sections of rock that are 1,000 square miles. As we're in California, it's a lot more fragmented. It's not great big huge slabs of rock. It's just like that fault that runs from Charleston, South Carolina, runs all the way up into New York City, through New York City. That fault and down into from North Carolina, maybe northern South Carolina, all the way up into Pennsylvania is the Grand Pluton. It's the biggest single chunk of rock known to exist anywhere in the world, and that's the reason, like in North Carolina, you don't see a lot of basements because if you dig down very far, you're going to get into water. I mean, it's just the way it is, because you've got that big slab of rock, and I think it goes like from Pennsylvania, and it kind of goes like that and dips down, and as it gets further south, it's a little more elevated up into Pennsylvania. And so, water tends to stand on top of it. And so, I know when I was a kid, you could go dig a hole pretty much about anywhere and it would start filling up with water, or get, unless you was up in a high elevation or something. But anyway, we see all these things starting to kind of play out. And like I talked in the previous videos about those 4 angels that are released from the Euphrates River, and they go out gathering these armies, and then during the tribulation period, it says that there's 3 unclean spirits that come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the first beast, and out of the mouth of the second beast, the false prophet, and they go out to bring these these armies have all been gathered and been preparing. Now they're going to draw them over to the valley of Jezreel at Haganon. Or not Haganon, but Harmageddo. So that, we see all these things kind of playing out. And we see the geopolitical situation. And again, like we talked about before with Germany and the European Union and all, they're getting kind of in a bad way over there. Germany's now gone into a recession, and they're the industrial manufacturing powerhouse of Europe. And over here we complain about gas being $3.55, $4 a gallon. Well, think about if you was paying that much per liter. For a liter of gas. So for a gallon of gas, they're paying $11, $12 a gallon for gasoline over there right now. And you had this event here recently where the Ukrainians were trying to blow up the Turk Stream pipeline. And what that would do is that you got right now, you still have 2 pipelines that have gas and oil flowing into Europe from Russia. You've got one pipeline that is flows through Ukraine, and then you got that Turk Stream which flows down. Goes. I'm not exactly sure what the route is, but it's through the maybe the Black Sea that it flows down and goes down through there and comes around over around Crimea, and they got Crimea, Russia does now, so it may even go through Crimea into Russia, and so there's oil and gas going through that pipeline, going across Turkey over into Europe. And Ukraine they were trying to figure out a way to go over there and blow it up, but the Russians have ships that are guarding it. And what that would do, when you think about it, is what would that do? Well, it would leave the only pipeline going into Europe would be the one going through Ukraine. And Ukraine gets a percentage of they charge a fee to the Europeans for allowing that oil to flow through their territory. And they're talking about jacking it up to 25% of the total price of the oil going through there. Now, it seems to me that would be, one of the reasons why they might be trying to blow up that pipeline. And now it's come out that it was Ukraine that blew up the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines. Okay, you had these people blow up. So now, if they could get rid of this other pipeline, the only source of oil would be through Ukraine. Now, how is that hurting Russia? That ain't hurting Russia. That's hurting Europe. And, I'm really surprised that the Europeans, especially the Germans, are willing to go along with this. And it's our warmongering government and a bunch of deceived Americans that think that Russia is this great enemy, you know, and we got to destroy them. That war over there right now that started over there in Ukraine was started because they broke a series of agreements, the Minsk Accords. There were several of them, and part of it was that, you know, and it was all deception. And you have European leaders that have come out and acknowledged that they did that to buy them time so they could put more weapons and different stuff there in Ukraine, because their agenda, this is their agenda, is they want to overtake Russia and divide it up into 5 regions. So, I mean, and you know, so they deceived, they lied to Russia, told them, because that area that Russia is in over there in Ukraine, the Donbass, is mostly ethnic Russians, and the Ukrainians were trying to wipe them out. They were committing genocide against these people, and in violation of those Minsk agreements. And so you know they violated this stuff, and this is all by design. And what's going to happen is as things get worse over there in Europe, I mean, you're starting to see more and more rebellion against the European Union about what's going on. You got Viktor Orban over there in Hungary. You've got Belarus, Slovakia, Slovenia, Lithuania. A lot of these countries, they're saying we're just not going along with this anymore. And what they're doing, is that it's going to fragment Europe. I mean, and you still have all this stuff going on over there in France. These protests and stuff against Emmanuel Macron. You had some here, where was it? I forgot the country, but they trying to overthrow, they start these coups, to try to overthrow the duly elected person in that country. And of course it is, the deep state, CIA, that bunch that does this stuff. They go into these countries and they stir people up. They give them a lot of money, pay these people. Basically just paid people, what they call useful idiots. It's just like here in America with Black Lives Matter and Antifa and all that bunch going around, and they're still doing it. Them people, they don't care about them. Antifa, they could care less about any of it. They're being paid, and they're being shipped around wherever they want them to go to start trouble. Well, they went into Texas down there, and they shut them down. They didn't let them go down there and do like they do over there in Portland and places like that in Seattle. They shut them down. And they try to say, oh, Antifa's, that's just an idea. They no organized. Well, yeah, they're organized. They give them, these people are all dressed the same. They, and in some instances they carrying weapons and stuff. AR-15s and stuff like that. And at the same time, you got all these politicians up there trying to disarm us. Trying to disarm, law-abiding American citizens, and when you're letting millions of people across our border, you're letting these terrorist groups like Antifa, because they are terrorists and they are to be declared a terrorist organization, shut down. But it's like I said before. They let this stuff happen because, people will get so desperate that they'll be willing to do whatever. Like Benjamin Franklin said, if you're willing to give up one of your freedoms for temporary security, you're not going to have either one. You're not going to have security or freedom. Because, and like I read, said about, Leviticus 26, Deuteronomy 12, Deuteronomy 28. That's why it's important to read these scriptures, not just to listen to somebody like me or somebody else, go off about it, go on about it, but to read them for yourself, and you'll begin to see. You'll see these things playing out right in front of our very eyes. And so somebody said, Jonathan Kahn, he said, people's always saying, man, I wished I lived back in biblical times. He says, well, congratulations, you're living in biblical times. Because we are living in biblical times. And we never have not been. This is the future foretold. This is the foretelling of history as it's going to play out. And that in itself should just, that should make people repent. Just if they understood that this is history in advance. And we have it. And of course, again, that's why the satanic side, the Luciferian side, they hate this. They hate it because it tells us the truth. And they're going to be coming after it. They're passing all of these laws, these hate speech laws, that when you call out stuff like LGBTQPM and all that stuff, or you call out this transgender stuff, or you call out these people that are setting up these Baphomets and these idols all over the place, and you call that stuff out, you're a hater. You're a homophobe, you're a transphobe, you're a this phobe. And that's how these people operate. Remember what Christ said. He says, if a house is divided against itself, it cannot stand. Divide and conquer. They have sowed so much division in this country. And the Democrats are the main culprits of this. But as I've said before too, the Republicans is just controlled opposition. There's no real difference. They all have the same agenda. The end game is the same for both. A world government in which they enslave us. And they want to put their, this transhuman agenda to, put it to work. Implanting us with these mind-controlling chips and these gene-altering substances. And, I tell you, don't take my word for it. If you do some research, you begin to, research transhumanism and the World Economic Forum's agenda and the UN's agenda. And you look into the genetic modification programs. It's real. It ain't something that's, people think, oh man, that's, conspiracy theory, that's way out yonder in 2200. No, it's right now. And it's accelerating. And if you think that these people, these scientists, basically just clones of Dr. Mengele, they want to bring these kinds of technologies and research that they've been working on. They want to see it go to fruition. They want to see it implemented. They want to find out what the result of it will be. And as I said before, this stuff is not something just started. It started years ago. They've been experimenting with this stuff for decades. Trying to perfect it. Learning to understand epigenetics. How to turn these genes on and off. CRISPR-9. Where they can go in there and splice genes and put the other genes inside. And alter you. Create super soldiers that have the vision of a hawk and can eat grass like a deer or something. That way they can be out there in the jungles or out, on the battlefield somewhere, and all they got to do is reach over and grab a handful of straw and eat it. And their guts will be able to break down the cellulose. This is the kind of stuff that they're doing. And then not only that, the British, they revealed that in a lot of those genetic labs over there, that they created 150 chimeras. And, they were in the egg or whatever, or in the uterus of an animal or whatever, or even of a human probably, and they were viable. They had mixed animals and animals, and probably even mixed humans and animals. The very thing that was going on back in Noah's day, I think it's in the book of Jasher, that it says in there that they taught man, the fallen angels taught man, the mixing of humans and animals and kinds. And when it's talking about kinds, taking different animals and mixing them together, animals that do not normally are not capable of breeding together and producing an offspring. They're too different. You can breed different species of cats together because they're in the same kind. But if you have an animal outside of their kind that's a different kind, and I'm talking about K-I-N-E, kind. If they're of a different kind, you can try to breed them animals, but they will not produce an offspring. Now, animals within a kind, like I say, different kinds of cats, you can take a tiger and a lion and breed them. But most of the time, if they do, the animal that their offspring will usually be sterile. They're not. There is occasions where some of them can produce offspring too, but most of the time they're not able to. Like a mule. That's what a mule is. It's a cross between a horse and a donkey, and those animals are in the same kind. K-I-N-E. Not kind, I'm not saying K-I-N-D, I'm saying K-I-N-E. And so kinds are like a group of similar animals. Zebras, horses, donkeys, ponies. They all, similar kinds of animals, but they're, and so they're in the same kind. But and cats are in one kind, and dogs are of a kind. And rodents are of a kind, and so you have these different kinds. Well, they are taking animals from different kinds and breeding them and making them, and they are viable. So that if they allowed them to come to maturity and to be born, they would be half of a horse and half of a giraffe, or half of a some other kind of animal, half of a lion or something. And they said that these 150 chimeras, that they let them go to like 10 days, of development, and they stayed viable. Normally they would be some kind of a rejection and they would die. But they figured out a way through the genetics to hook them together and to put something in there, some splice or whatever in there, that kept it from being rejected. And so, and my feeling is when you look back through history at the development of stuff, nuclear energy, nuclear weapons, all that stuff, once they figure out how to do something, they don't leave it there just, well, we know we can do it. No, they always bring it to the point where we're going to do it and see for ourselves that it really works. So I would say there's probably somewhere in the world right now where there are chimeras. And these viruses and stuff that we're seeing, those are chimeric viruses. They are different viral types kinds, viral kinds that have been mixed together. This gain of function research that you hear them talking about, that gain of function research is to create these chimeras and to make them more potent. But anyway, I've gotten kind of off the track there. But I just want you to understand that this is the kind of stuff it's talking about here. That when you look through the Bible and you get really begin to put it together, you see this is the kind of stuff that's going on that would be going on. The same thing that was going on back there in Noah's time. And you got to remember, them people lived extremely long lifespans, and they were more intelligent. I mean, their intelligence was, because they lived in a whole lot more pristine environment there. The food was, hadn't been, of course, by the time of Noah, it had been corrupted, the food and stuff like that. But initially, the food was pure, man. I mean, full of nutrients and stuff. I mean, real healthy. But then here, you go over here, and it says, that they shall deliver you up to be afflicted and kill you, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And of course, that was true then, and it's true now. That we are hated, and especially as the tribulation gets worse and worse, they're going to blame us for it. They're going to say it's because of us that all these things are happening to them. It says, and then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. Now, I mean, just open your eyes and look around at the betrayal and everybody is offended. Everybody's offended by something. I mean, I've never in my life seen people so thin-skinned. They're offended by everything. And, rather than just shrugging it off and going on, they make a big scene over it. And shall hate one another. Well, you look at the hatred. And these elitist politicians and ones that are the ones that are stirring this stuff up. And they're doing it deliberately because I believe they're all controlled by, either demonically controlled or satanically controlled. And they just do what, and they may even be these entities, that are appearing as human beings. I mean, we just don't know, but we can look at their actions and know what, that they certainly are not, and this is what really gets me. They get around, well, I believe in God and all that. Yeah, what God? Which God do you believe in? Do you believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Huh? Is that, the one you believe in? Or do you believe in some other God? And I would be willing to bet you it's some other God. And it says here, and many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. Well, we see that going on everywhere too, boy. Just turn on TBN. TBN or, one of these channels like that, and it says, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And the gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. And I've mentioned this before about this island over there that they claim was the last place on earth that the gospel had not been preached in. And there was a missionary went there and was preaching the gospel to them, and they killed him. So it says this, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. It'll be preached unto all the world. And it's not talking about every individual, but it's talking about nations. It says every nation shall hear the gospel. And so that last island nation was the last one. And they heard it. Not everybody on that island nation heard it, but it was preached there as a witness. And so now the end's coming. Then shall the end come. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, Whosoever readeth, let him understand. And it doesn't say no temple there. It just says the holy place. You know, everybody keeps talking about a temple and all that stuff being over there. I don't think it's going to be a temple. I think it's just going to be a consecrated place. And, you know, probably more like what was going, you know, the kind of worship that they did during the Exodus when they were had the tabernacle. Because I think, you know, yeah, I just think it's I don't think they're going to, you know, rebuild a temple. And even if they do, it says that it's just going to be the temple part itself. It's not going to be the whole temple complex. But anyway, then let them, then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of the house. Neither let him which is in the field return back take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Now, these people that try to say that that happened back there in 70 AD when the Romans destroyed the temple and all that, that's what that's talking about. Well, no, it's not. Because first off, it says that in, you know, that there shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, so ever, never ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. Well, they did not have the ability to destroy all flesh back then. I mean, you know, it's estimated that they was probably in that period of time, you know, 500 million people on the earth. And, you know, they did not have weapons of mass destruction, so there was no way that they could have ever have killed off all flesh. And it ain't just talking about human beings, it's talking about all flesh. Animals, birds, sea life, everything. All flesh. No, that's, you know, that ability did not occur until 1945. When they dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's when those things happened. And that was when the beginning of having the ability to destroy all flesh, that's when that occurred. And of course it says, except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Because that's who they're going to be coming after. And they're going to do what? It's just like this going over here in Ukraine. I mean, they just keep trying to escalate this stuff, and they could make a peace agreement. They could bring, there's a lot of different people who have, said, hey, we'll negotiate a peace agreement here or whatever. Even the Chinese. But they don't want peace. They will continue this on and until somebody stops it, or until they just realize that, but and again, I don't necessarily 100% trust the Russians or Vladimir Putin. I mean, I think he's probably just a wicked man too, but I trust him more than I do this man in the White House up here. Because everything that he's come out and said was true, found to be true. And one thing, he come out and called out the West for the decline in our moral values. I mean, if you look at what they've done over there in Russia, they don't allow same-sex marriages and all that stuff. And they real, and this transgender and all that stuff. They don't allow that stuff. But here, we've endorsed all that stuff. And everything that this right here says is an abomination, we're allowing it. Why? Because the churches, these so-called churches, remain silent. They don't say nothing. In fact, they are starting to endorse it. So that ought to tell you about the falling away, the apostasy. That they are accepting anything and everything now. And even marrying these people. When this plainly, clearly says that it is an abomination. And in the Old Testament, they put you to death for that. And here, in the New Testament, it says you'll be cast in the lake of fire. But these churches, they don't speak out about nothing. About abortion, about same-sex marriage, about transgenderism, about any of that stuff. They don't call it out at all. They just go along. They're hirelings. They're just in it for the money. And there's very few that do. I mean, there's a few out there, lone wolves, that, true shepherds that are, calling this stuff out, standing for what's right. John MacArthur, Dean Odell, Jonathan Cahn. I mean, there's a few voices out there that are, that are speaking out against this stuff. But they're few and far between. And that's why I tell people, just come out of them places. I know you want to be in fellowship with other Christians and all that, but you're not really in fellowship with other Christians if you're in one of these congregations. Because if they're practicing these things, if they're worshiping on Sunday, if they're keeping these holidays, these pagan holidays, if they're allowing, Freemasons and people like that to sit there and be deacons, even be ministers in the church, if they're doing all this and allowing all this, then I have serious reservations about whether you're a true believer, truly converted. And if you have a conscience that is bothering you about it, you need to get out of it. Get out of it. And there's, people, you look around, you'll find that there are some people that are going to have like beliefs and that want to know what this truly says and what it tells us how to worship our Creator. And it ain't like that. Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here's Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. The only way that they cannot deceive the elect is if you receive the Ruach HaKodesh. He is the one that will lead you to truth and to teach you these things, so that you can't be deceived. Whenever I've talked about my troubles and stuff, and how it was the Father chastised me, and I prayed diligently not to be deceived. Father, do not let me be deceived. And of course, things began to open up to me that I never knew before. And I've studied this all my life. But it goes to show you how you can be blinded and deceived even though you have read this. Because if you're not being led by the Ruach, you will be deceived. Because you will not get what this is. Because for one, the Scriptures interprets itself. It's not up to any individual interpretation. It interprets itself. And a lot of times, like when you look at the parables, when Christ would give his disciples the parables, and they say, why are you speaking these parables? Because they didn't understand them either. And then he would, take them aside and he would explain to them what they meant. Well, why would I need to interpret that when he's doing it for me? You see, the scriptures is interpreting itself. We just have to let it speak to us. And when we do, because this is alive. This word is alive. And if we allow it to speak to us, then we will get its interpretation. It will give it to us. And so, don't, because he tells us in here explicitly, even as the lightning goes from the east even unto the west, so shall the return of the Son of Man be. He comes on a cloud in power and great glory. And the whole world will see him. And it ain't going to be on CNN because the world's going to be laid desolate. There ain't going to be no communication systems because the earth is going to be laid waste. That's what desolation means. I mean, these things that are going to be coming upon the earth, man, they're going to just, if he didn't shorten the days, it'd wipe out everything. That's why he returns, to destroy those who are destroying the earth. The earth is flat and unmoving. And that's how everybody will see him. So, but anyway, I'm going to move on. Well, here it is right here in Matthew 27. For as the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. Now, I've heard some people say, that's kind of funny. When you look at a lot of these, national symbols, the United States, the eagle. Germany, the eagle. Russia, the eagle. And a lot of other countries where the eagles are gathered. And you can go back and also look at the symbolism for the tribe of Dan was a serpent, but he changed. They didn't like that, so they changed it to an eagle with a snake in its hands. So, you began to look at that, and some people believe that that's the tribe through which the Antichrist will come. I don't know, but it's just kind of funny. He's saying here, wherever the eagle, the carcasses are, that's where the eagles will be. And if you look at the United States, all our military uniforms have got eagles on them all over them. The buttons and stuff, there's eagles all over them. Their hats, got eagles on them. Just saying, may be wrong, but, I think it's metaphorical. That it's describing something that, these eagles that are on all these uniforms and standards and flags and crest, these coat of arms and stuff like that of these people. It's just funny. So, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. That's the day of the Lord, the day of Yahuwah. Yeah. All right, now we're going to look here at Mark chapter 12, or chapter 13, and of course this is parallels Matthew. It's sort of just Mark's telling it from a little bit different perspective, but it really is telling you pretty much the same thing here in chapter 13, verse 5 of Mark. And Yahushua answering them began to say, "Take heed lest any man deceive you." I mean, you got to see the the repetition of this, the repeating it over and over again. Must be doing it for a reason. And it goes on to tell you pretty much the same thing, that you hear wars and rumors of wars. Be not troubled, for such things must needs be, but the end shall not be yet. For nation shall rise against nation. But take heed to yourselves, for they shall deliver you to councils and beat you and they'll kill you for my name's sake. For a testimony, and it's for a testimony against them. And the gospel must first be published among all nations. And so, we see basically a repeat of it. And the same thing here in Luke chapter 21. Again, Luke is kind of telling it from his own perspective. Luke 21:8. And he said, take heed that ye be not deceived, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ. And the time draweth near, go ye not therefore after them. In other words, don't follow after these people, these false Christs and these deceivers. And that's what I'm telling you, to get out of these churches. If they're not teaching you the truth from the word here, the word of Elohim, get out of it. And of course, it says, but when ye shall hear of wars and commotions, be not terrified, for these things must first come to pass, but the end is not by and by. And again, he says, nation shall rise against nation, and pestilences, and fearful sights, and great signs shall there be from heaven. But before all these, they shall lay their hands on you, and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues, and into prisons, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. Now again, these are dual prophecies. These things did happen to them. They were brought up before rulers. They were taken to the synagogues. They were scourged. They were crucified and killed for their testimonies. They were put in prison. Paul was in prison. He was, and then he was ultimately beheaded. And you shall be betrayed both by parents and brethren and kinfolks and friends, and some of you they shall cause to be put to death, your own people. And you look at the division, and we looked last night, me and Becca looked at this. This happened right here in Charleston, West Virginia. A boy, I think he was 13 years old in 2020, killed his stepdad, his mom, and his two brothers. Killed them all. Is that not? And you see this more and more and more and more. You heard about stuff like this in the past, years ago. Especially back in Christ's day, there was so much intrigue and all that stuff going on in the palaces and all that stuff. Look at Rome. You forever was hearing about, one brother assassinating his brother, that was the emperor, and so that he could take power, or their mother killing one of them or something, or them killing their mother because she was in league with his brother to kill him, and just on and on. But nowhere have we ever seen the like of this that we're seeing today. Just unbelievable. And of course, some of the different, but they again, he tells it in his own way. And of course, there it says, and there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. Well, we're seeing this. These typhoons and hurricanes. On a ever increasing and more powerful. These tsunamis. You just hear about them all the time. Now, every time there's an earthquake, there's a tsunami. And it's just more frequent. Now, granted, years ago, you might not hear about it for years because we didn't have the communications that we do now. Stuff is instantaneous. But I still don't think that there was nearly as many of these things happening as we're seeing now, and they seem to be accelerating. And the sun, signs in the sun and the moon. Well, we've been seeing more and more of these total solar eclipses, these blood moons. I mean, just, tetrads of blood moons. I mean, which is like 4 blood moons in a row. And I mean, that's, and it says that, in the last days, the sun will be black as sackcloth of hair and the moon turn to blood. Well, there you have it, and we're seeing it more and more and more. And these are signs. But it says, with perplexity, and in men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming upon the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Well, we see these things that are going to cause men's hearts fail. And this has just been a few days ago out there in Arizona somewhere, maybe California. There was a bunch of people saw it too. I mean, this huge craft. I mean, it was huge. And it was like that one that was seen, the lights over Phoenix, which was back in, I think that was back in the 90s. Even the governor there saw it, but he kind of made a joke out of it. But there was thousands of people saw that thing, and it was a big V-shaped thing, and it was like a mile or so long. I mean, it was huge. And I just, I know our governments, the governments of the world, they have, technologies and stuff that we're not aware of, way more advanced than stuff that we are made privy to. But I do not believe they have the capability of making anything like that. That is the fallen powers that have those things. And I believe that the Hasatan and that bunch, they're on craft that are like planets. And that, and we can look back in history and the Native Americans, different ones that drew these petroglyphs on caves and stuff showing these planets coming close, Mars and different ones. And when they did, it discharged lightning between them and the surface of the earth. And I mean, cut gouges in the earth like the Grand Canyon. And so, I think that's, and that's what I was talking about. The powers of heaven shall be shaken. These things are going to be coming down here. When they're cast out from up there, up in the top part of the second heaven, up in the aether, and they're cast back down here, they're coming down here in these crafts. And you can even look at these Vimanas that the Hindu people talk about in the Vedic text over there. These things were like cities. I mean, they were huge, and they had cities built on them, and they were flying around in the air. So, people's hearts, when these things start coming down here and people, wholesale start seeing them, whole cities see them, people will have heart attacks. I mean, it'll scare them to death. But we don't have to be afraid, because we know who the winner is. We know who wins, who's already won. It ain't a matter if he wins, he's already won. So they come down here with great wrath because they know that when he returns, they're going to be cast down into darkness. Now, Satan gets bound down there in darkness. And his, the angels with him, but the false prophet and the Antichrist, they get cast into the lake of fire. They don't come back no more. But Satan, he's bound for 1,000 years until the end of the millennium. And, and I'll read that scripture too. But anyway, I encourage you to read all those chapters. Chapter 24 of Matthew, Mark 13, Luke 21, they, kind of look at them, look at the synchronicity, the cohesion of it. Now I'm looking here in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 13. I believe it's 13, yep. But, am I in 2 Thessalonians? Yep. 2 Thessalonians, that's 2 Timothy. I'm sorry. 2 Thessalonians 2:3. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. Which I tell you what, that president we got up there could certainly be called a man of sin, and the son of perdition. But we see a falling away. I mean, we're seeing a falling away from the true belief. People are falling into every kind of false doctrine and religion. This New Age movement, Satanism, Luciferianism, Middle Eastern, and Eastern religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism. They're falling into everything but the truth. They're falling into deception. And then we look here, let's see, 2 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 13. But evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. And you look at all these people, these powerful people, just deceiving one another and being deceived, and us lower people too, but it seems like when you just kind of follow if you can, as best you can, follow what's going on in the political elitist circles, then people deceive each other too. Because they all have agendas. I've talked about that before, about how these fallen ones and these demonic entities, they don't all get along, with each other. They're like humans in that sense that, they got emotions and all, and they like who they like, and they don't like somebody, they don't like them. But they go along with each other because they know what the end game is. They know what's going to happen to them, and so they all on board with destroying us. They got no problem with that. But at the same time, they one doesn't like the idea of another one lording over him, or being over him. So to speak. So they kind of are at odds with each other. And if they're controlling these political entities and people like that, well, they're going to be at odds they're going to be at odds with each other too. It's just the way it is. But, that's the whole thing in a nutshell about deception and, deceiving and being deceived. And evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. I don't like to be like doom and gloom, because it ain't doom and gloom. I'm warning people. I'm trying to be a watchman and warn people about what's coming and to not be deceived, but that there is our hope, and that's in our Messiah and his coming kingdom. And that he's going to put this stuff down once and for all. But yes, there's going to be tribulation. We're going to be experiencing it. There's just no way for us to get around it. But it's a testing to test us to see whether we're going to be faithful and whether we're going to endure. What does it say? Endure, those who endure to the end. So these people that want to tell you you're going to be in a secret rapture and all that stuff, they're lying to you. Those who endure to the end will get a crown of life and will enter into his kingdom. And when it's talking about enduring to the end, it's talking about keeping his commandments and the doctrine of Christ and his testimony. And we'll see that right here in Revelation. Let's see. Let's look at Revelation chapter 12. Actually, we'll look at Revelation chapter 9 and verse 21. And this is just what I was talking about a while ago about. It says, neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornications, nor of their thefts, their drug abuse. They just didn't repent. And also in Revelation 18, and I'll show you that here in a minute, but here in Revelation chapter 12 and verse 9, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world, and he was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. What I was just talking about. That's why you're beginning to see a more increase in this. But the ones we're seeing now, they keep getting a little bit bigger and bigger. Before, always in the past, generally they were these little flying saucers, 30, 40 feet across or whatever is what people were seeing. Sometimes they'd see some other stuff, these cylinders, But now more and more people are seeing these things that are miles across. And I think you're seeing, it's like a hierarchy, it's just like a military. You're on the earth, you got your guys up there at the front, your scouts, they driving Jeeps and Humvees and stuff, maybe 8 guys or something like that in a little squad. But then you got a company, and then you got a regiment, and then you got a division, and then you got howitzers, and then you got tanks, and then you got ever bigger and more powerful weapons until you get to aircraft carriers and B-52 bombers, and it's the same thing. They're revealing themselves, incrementally. You're seeing bigger and bigger, and then you're going to see big. I mean, planet-sized big. But they're not planets like the heliocentric cosmology people are portraying them. It's 100,000 miles in diameter. No, I'd say the biggest of these planets that we see, these wandering stars, these planets, probably 15, 20 miles across. But that is still enormous. So I mean, they're gonna be showing up in mass, and people are gonna be freaking out when they really start showing up, and they don't go away. They don't disappear like they do now, and bug out, and gone in a blink of an eye. No, when they get down here in mass, they're gonna be present all the time until the Messiah returns, because they're going to be preparing to make war with him. And they're going to try to get us to join with them to make war with them. I mean, that's their, and they know we're going to be destroyed, by his appearing. And here in Revelation chapter 13, verse 14, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. So, and if you read on there, it gets into the mark and all that stuff. And I believe the mark is more than just a chip being put into you. I think it's a whole system of worship that's associated with it. Sunday Sabbath worship, this image, this abomination. And of course, when that happens, that abomination that causes desolation, that's when it really gets bad. The second half of the 7 years, the time of Jacob's trouble, the time of Israel's trouble, and that's all Israel. That's not just the house of Judah and over there in Israel today. It's talking about the house of Israel too. And it's the time of Jacob's trouble. That's all of his descendants. And so that includes us. That includes the British Commonwealth and France and the Nordic peoples. That includes all of us. Then you've got Revelation 18 and 23. It says, and the light of the candle shall shine no more at all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride and shall not be heard no more in thee at all. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. By thy, and that word sorceries there is pharmakia. That is the word pharmakia, is what they're deceived by these drugs. You know, and this DMT and ayahuasca and these vaccines and all this stuff, all these pills and all the stuff that these pharmacos are pumping out. And then here, now this is our hope, and this is in Revelation chapter 20. Starting at verse 2, and he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that, he must be loosed a little season, and that's at the great white throne judgment. And then in Revelation chapter 20, verse 8. And it says, start at verse 7. And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And they went up on the breadth of the earth, and compassed the camp of the saints about in the beloved city. And fire came down from heaven, from Elohim, out of heaven, and devoured them. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. And then that's when the throne of judgment takes place. And that's deceiving. He's released to deceive all those people that made it out of great tribulation, that didn't get destroyed, that had their opportunity to hear the truth and stuff. And then in this second one, and of course, he's not able to deceive anybody anymore after that. But there you have it. Don't be deceived. And as I always say, folks, I love you, and I don't want you to be deceived. I mean, that's why I do this. I want people to know the truth, because the truth will set you free. And you can't be deceived if you have the truth. And, everything in the world, if you just kind of step back and just contemplate, meditate on it. And I'm not talking about this meditation zoning your brain out to where you got no thoughts in your head so that you can let these demonic and fallen entities come in and take control of your mind. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about meditating on His Word. What does it mean? And meditating on the things that you see happening around us. And you'll begin to see that everything is set up to deceive. Everything. The religious system, the political system, the economic system. It's all set up to deceive us. I mean, it's just, when I began to really kind of, understand this, it just blew my mind. I just like, man, it truly is, this world truly is under the control of Satan. He's truly running it, and he is the deceiver. He is the great deceiver. And that's why it says he deceives the whole world. And the reason he's able to deceive the whole world, because he has all these systems set up to deceive us. The political system, the religious system, and the economic system. They're all set up to deceive us. they're all orchestrated and constructed in a, built up as a mechanisms to deceive us. So again, I love you. I pray for you folks, and I hope you won't be deceived. If you are deceived, it's on your own head, because I'm telling you the truth. I'm revealing this truth of what the Word says. And, the Father says in the last days He will pour out the Ruach on all flesh, and people will prophesy and dream dreams. And, because, and there is no new prophecy as far as biblical prophecy is concerned about something that's going to happen. But it is, prophecy of revelation of this Word, where certain words like stuff in the book of Daniel and Revelations, books that were sealed up, are being revealed, and what the meaning of it is. Yes, people have revelations and prophesy these books, and people have visions and see dreams about things that are getting ready to take place. But those things were already foretold in there. But we don't have a timeline or a date set in there as to when they're going to happen. But Christ tells us, to be watching, to be watchmen. And it's not just talking about watchmen, as the watching over believers, but it's talking about watching for His return. When you see these things begin to come to pass, lift up your eyes to heaven, for your redemption draweth nigh. So we're seeing these things beginning to happen. So we need to be looking up for our Messiah, because He's coming in power and great glory. And He has a name written in His vesture, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And He comes back here to destroy those who are destroying the earth, and to establish a kingdom here that is righteous, that is just, and that is righteous judgment. And it is to teach those who, the ones that make it through Great Tribulation, that didn't receive the mark of the beast, because there will be those that don't, but there'll be, people that are underground hiding out, in the wilderness and different places, and then there'll be the elect, the people that have been faithful to our Messiah, that will be hidden. Some will be martyred, but there'll be those, the ones that don't come and war against Him, because those will be destroyed. But the ones that don't, that didn't receive the mark of the beast and worship His image and all that stuff, they'll go into the millennium, and they'll be taught His ways and taught His truth, But anyway, this is going a little bit long. I really wanted to try to keep it short, but it's just, to really get, to go into depth in this stuff and read it and explain it and try to get some understanding. It just takes time. But I love you folks. Pray for me, because I am being throttled, and there's a good chance they might even take this video down. I don't know. Because I talk about things that we're not supposed to talk about. The thought police or whatever, they want to police our thoughts. That's why they want to put these chips in people's foreheads. You can listen to people like Klaus Schwab and that bunch over at the World Economic Forum. That's exactly what they have in mind. Bill Gates, they all are, they're all of one mind, and they have one agenda. They want to make us into like cattle. That's all we are to them. We're just like cattle. And so they want to put these chips in our heads so they can actually see what we're, know what we're thinking. And, like 1984, George Orwell, the thought police. You're not allowed to think that. Okay. So with that, be good Bereans. You go read these scriptures, study them, and look around, find you some good sources of information about the things that are going on around the world, and kind of just, start putting the picture together, and you'll see that everything's been created to be deceiving, to deceive us into believing, these false narratives, and lead us into the pit. But we can, we can be, we don't have to be led into the pit if we will believe the word and follow what it says. Do what he tells us, and we won't be deceived. He won't allow us to be. So with that, I'll see you folks on the next Shabbat, if Yahuwah is willing.